In this video, we're going to use theta being equal to pi over 3 to find the exact value of each of the expressions listed. We want to find the value of cosine theta over 2, cosine squared of theta, and the cosine of negative theta. So as usual, we're going to try to use the unit circle where we can. Notice that pi over 3 is on the unit circle. It's right here, so that's going to be important for a couple of these problems. But without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the first problem. We want to find the cosine of theta over 2. Now we know that theta is equal to pi over 3, so really we can rewrite this problem as the cosine of theta pi over 3 divided by 2. And then if you simplify this, 2 is the same thing as 2 over 1, and if you multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator, since we're dividing fractions, this becomes cosine pi over 6. And so cosine theta over 2 is the same thing as finding the cosine pi over 6. So actually for this particular problem, we're interested in finding pi over 6 on the unit circle, and we want the cosine of pi over 6, so what we're really interested in is the x value. And so the answer to cosine pi over 6 is going to be the square root of 3 over 2. And that's it for the first one. Now for the second problem, we want to find cosine squared of theta. And so again, rewriting this problem is going to be the key to figuring out the answer. Cosine squared theta is just fancy notation for taking the cosine value at theta and then squaring it. So these two things that I'm underlining in blue are the same thing. So if you see it written one way and you want to write it the other, that's perfectly all right. So now that we see that it's cosine of theta and then we square it, what we can do is go back to theta. That's going to be pi over 3, and we're interested in, again, the cosine of theta, so we're interested in the x value right here. The x value at pi over 3 is 1/2, and so what we're going to do is we're just going to basically substitute 1/2 in the place of cosine theta, and that's still going to be squared. So all we did was switch that out right there, and then 1/2 squared, the same thing as 1/2 times 1/2, that's going to give us 1 over 4. And that is our final answer for cosine squared theta. So for the last problem, we want to find the cosine of negative theta. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a property. Really what we're trying to find is the cosine of negative pi over 3, since theta is pi over 3. But still, that's not something we find on the unit circle. So I'm going to use a property. I'm going to use the fact that cosine is an even function. That means that the cosine of negative pi over 3 is the same thing as the cosine of positive pi over 3, which is on the unit circle. And again, we already have it circled, and we want the cosine of pi over 3, which is the x value, so we have a green arrow pointing to it. The x value at pi over 3 is just 1/2. And that's going to be our answer. And so it's perfectly okay to manipulate the argument or the angle by dividing by a number by using our even and odd properties of trig functions, or by just rewriting the problem. For instance, if we have cosine squared of theta as cosine theta, and then we square everything.